The OR smelled like bleach and hot metal, the kind of clean that never quite hides fear. A man was bleeding out on the table, and Dr. Thomas Grayson, the surgeon everyone calls unstoppable, couldn't make the red stop coming. Then the rookie at the edge of the light stepped forward and did something that should have been impossible. Afterward, Grayson didn't praise her. He didn't even raise his voice. He leaned in close enough that only she could hear and whispered the question that can ruin careers and expose secrets. Whoever trained her. If you've ever felt underestimated, watched, judged, boxed in by your level, this story will hit hard. Stay to the end and you'll see what it costs to stop hiding. Before we begin, like the video and comment where you're watching from. Because once that whisper lands, nothing goes back. The whisper did not follow Ava Carter out of the operating room like a sound. It followed her like a scent that clung to her hair, her scrubs, the soft skin at her wrists where gloves ended. Who trained you? It sat behind her eyes as she scrubbed under water so hot it stung, as if she could rinse away the memory of what her fingers had just done. Across the sink, Dr. Thomas Grayson stared at the stainless steel, not at her. He was still in his cap, still in his gown, still wearing the face the hospital trusted. A nurse peeled suction tubing off the drapes. Someone counted sponges. Someone called for the next case. Hospital life returned to its rhythm the way a city does after a siren fades. Ava kept her eyes down. That was the rule. Keep your head down. Hold the retractors. Ask for permission. Do not become a story. When she looked up by accident, she caught Dr. Leo Maddox watching from the doorway. Fourth-year resident, loud confidence, always leaning like he owned the hall. He did not smirk. He looked unsettled, like the rules had shifted. In the locker room, the air was thick with the damp cotton and old deodorant. Ava peeled off her cap and felt the cool of her scalp. Her locker held the same things it always held: a stethoscope, a spiral notebook, a crushed protein bar, a normal life she was trying to perform. The door banged behind her. Nina Brooks walked in without slowing. Senior resident, sharp jaw, sharper timing. She tossed her badge on the bench and started peeling off gloves. Carter, Nina said like she was tasting the name. Ava folded her scrub top with more care than it deserved. Brooks. Nina leaned against the lockers and studied her hands. You have any idea what you just did in there? Ava slid the scrubs into her locker. I followed the attending. Nina gave a short laugh. Sure. You followed him so hard he stopped talking. Ava locked the door. He gave me permission. Nina stepped closer, voice lower. Grayson does not give permission. He gives orders. Ava met her gaze for a beat, then looked away. Then he made an exception. Nina's eyes narrowed. Where did you train Carter? The question landed like a hand on a bruise. Ava kept her face still the way she had learned to keep it still when noise meant danger. Same place you did, she said. Nina stared at her, then exhaled through her nose. Funny, because you do not feel like any place I know. Ava clipped on her badge. I'm here. Nina watched her pass. Grayson eats people who do not belong. Outside, the hallway smelled like coffee and bleach, and the faint sweetness of sanitizer. Crescent Ridge Medical Center sat near the edge of downtown Denver. Tall glass, reflecting winter sky. From one stairwell window you could see the mountains like a line of dark teeth, snow on their shoulders, steady and indifferent. Ava had been in the building for 12 days. She knew that because she counted them the way people count storms. 12 days of waking before dawn, of answering pages while walking, of learning which nurses would save you and which ones would watch you drown. On paper, she was easy to place. Honors, top scores, letters that praised her calm in her hands. A clean match into surgery at a program that loved intensity and hated uncertainty, except for the gap. 2 years between graduation and residency. A blank stretch that sat on her application like a missing tooth. She had filled it with safe phrases: short-term clinics, outreach work, humanitarian support. Nothing that begged for questions. Nobody at interview dinners had asked for details. Medicine teaches people to look away from anything that might mirror them. Residents did not look away. Residents circled. That evening, in the residents' lounge, the television played muted highlights while people ate vending machine dinners. Ava sat at the far end of the couch pretending to read a patient list. She could hear Nina and Maddox at the table by the microwave talking low. "I've never seen him pause like that," Nina said. Maddox snorted. "He pauses when he's mad." "No," Nina said. "Not mad, thinking." "About her," Maddox said. Ava kept her eyes on the paper. The letters blurred. Nina's chair scraped. "She's a first year," she said. "You don't do that as a first year. You don't even know what to call it." Maddox's voice dropped. "It's not in the books." Nina's laugh was sharp. "Everything is in the books if you actually read." Maddox didn't laugh back. Not that. Ava stood before her hand shook. "I'm going to check on my patients," she said, voice steady. Nina turned smile too bright. "Good girl." Ava walked out without answering. In the hallway, she heard Nina say something else, but it dissolved under the hospital noise. She spent the next hour doing small tasks with stubborn precision. Updating orders, checking drains, replacing a dressing that had slipped. Her hands moved calmly, as if calm was a decision she made every minute. A nurse named Monica Reed watched her from the desk, a charge nurse with silver hair pulled tight and eyes that missed nothing. "You're new," Monica said, not looking up from her computer. Ava paused. "Yes, ma'am." Monica clicked through screens. "You did something in OR3 today." Ava's stomach tightened. "I assisted." Monica hummed. "Assisted. That's what they're calling it." Ava kept her face neutral. "That's what happened." Monica finally looked at her. "People love stories," she said, "especially in a building where everyone's tired. Don't feed them unless you want them to bite." Ava nodded once, understood. Monica's eyes softened a fraction. "Grayson will bite first," she said. "He'll do it with a smile if he thinks it's for safety." Ava thanked her and walked away, feeling Monica's gaze follow her down the hall like a hand at her back. At home, her apartment was small, clean, and almost empty. A sofa, a folding table, a stack of medical textbooks that looked untouched. Ava kept it that way on purpose. Nothing worth stealing. Nothing worth asking about. She showered until the steam fogged the mirror, then stood for a long time with the water pounding her shoulders, letting the sound drown out everything else. She slept for 3 hours and woke before her alarm heart already running. She lay still and listened to the building settle. A car door slammed outside. A neighbor laughed. Normal sounds, but her body treated them like warnings. She forced herself up anyway. The next morning, Ava arrived before sunrise. The hospital was quieter then, corridors empty except for night shift, drifting toward exits with red eyes and stiff backs. She grabbed coffee that tasted burned and headed to the surgical floor. Rounds began at 5:30. Grayson arrived at 5:29 because he liked to arrive at the peak of everyone's nerves. He walked fast, white coat snapping behind him, eyes already measuring. The team gathered outside the first room. Nina stood closest, tablet ready. Maddox leaned against the wall, casual, like he had never been afraid. The interns and first years made a second row, pressed back like furniture. Grayson scanned them. "Let's go." He moved through patients like a blade through cloth. Questions came sharp and fast. Complications, approaches, anatomy, decision points. Wrong answers earned a look that made people shrink. Right answers earned nothing. Ava listened. She kept her hands clasped behind her back and her expression blank. Give nothing away. By the third room, Grayson's gaze landed on her. "Dr. Carter." Ava lifted her chin. "Sir." "You've been silent," Grayson said. "Don't know or too scared to speak." A few seniors shifted, small smiles appearing. Quiet could be arrogance. Quiet could be hiding. Ava kept her voice even. "Neither. I'm listening." Grayson's mouth tightened. "Listening won't make you a surgeon." He stepped closer. Acute mesenteric ischemia. 30 minutes before bowel necrosis becomes irreversible. Surgical approach. The hallway narrowed. Ava could hear her own pulse not from doubt, but from memory. Immediate laparotomy, she said. Restore flow via embolectomy or bypass. Assess viability. Resect necrotic bowel. Second look in 24 hours. Grayson watched her like a monitor. Textbook, he said. Ava should have stopped. She felt the edge under her feet and still stepped closer. It works, she said. A senior resident made a soft sound of amusement. Nina's eyes flicked to Ava sharp. Grayson tilted his head. It works. Ava heard a generator hiccup in her mind. She smelled kerosene. She saw dusky bowel o'clock in someone's eyes. I've done it, she said. Silence dropped over the hallway. Maddox straightened off the wall. Grayson's eyebrows rose, not surprise calculation. You've done it where? Ava held his gaze, then looked past him to the nurse's station. Outreach, she said. Limited resources. Name it, Grayson said. Ava's mouth went dry. She chose the safest lie she had practiced. A clinic outside Goma, she said. Short term. Nina's face barely changed, but Ava saw the flash. Too specific to be casual. Too familiar to be innocent. Grayson studied her. Doctors don't get to be modest about relevant experience. Ava swallowed. It was 2 years ago, she said. Different context. Grayson held the silence 1 beat longer, then turned. Move. The team moved on. Footsteps resumed. The moment passed for everyone else like a cloud sliding off the sun. For Ava it lodged. In the elevator down, Maddox stood beside her. The mirror reflected their badges and the hierarchy printed in plastic. You didn't sound like you were reciting, he said. Ava stared straight ahead. We all study. Maddox's mouth twitched. You knew what it feels like when you do not do it fast enough. Ava tightened her grip on her coffee. You're imagining things. I'm noticing, Maddox said. And Grayson notices harder. The doors opened. Ava stepped out. Maddox followed a step. Residents love a mystery, he said, just so you know. Ava did not slow. Thanks. She took her breakfast to a corner table by the window. Snow drifted down outside, slow and quiet. Nina sat with the seniors' laughter bright and sharp. Ava stayed alone chewing, without tasting eyes scanning the room for exits out of habit. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She did not pull it out at the table. She waited until the stairwell where the hum of the building swallowed small sounds. Unknown number. You were too visible. Ava's stomach dropped. She stared at the screen, then typed. I answered a question. The reply came fast. You answered like you forgot where you are. Ava's throat tightened. She deleted the conversation and emptied the trash folder because she knew better than to leave shadows. Back on the floor, she worked the day the way a first year was supposed to. Dressings, drains, notes, consults, retractions until her shoulders burned. She smiled at nurses and took corrections without flinching. She stayed small on purpose. At midday, Nina cornered her outside a supply closet, blocking the doorway like it was casual. So Nina said, voice light Goma. Ava kept stacking gauze on the shelf. What about it? Nina toyed with a pen. My cousin did a year with Doctors Without Borders. I texted him. He says he knows the crews around there. Ava did not stop moving. Lots of crews. He doesn't know you, Nina said, and he remembers names. Ava closed the box of gauze. Then I wasn't with his group. Nina's smile thinned. Or you're making up places because you think it sounds brave. Ava met her gaze. I don't need to sound brave. Nina's smile vanished. No, she said. You just need to sound real. Because if Grayson thinks you're not, he'll tear through you and he won't care who he drags down. Ava's voice stayed calm. I'm not here to drag anyone down. Nina stepped aside at last. Then stop acting like you walked out of a movie, she said. This is a hospital. We do paperwork. Ava walked away, jaw tight, and forced her pace to stay normal. Late afternoon, Sharon called her to the program office for forms. Sharon wore reading glasses on a chain and carried calm like a weapon. Your badge access is updated, Sharon said. Benefits enrollment is complete. And Dr. Grayson asked for your file. Ava kept her face still. My file. Sharon nodded as if discussing the weather. He likes to keep tabs. Did he say why? Sharon's smile stayed polite. Dr. Grayson rarely says why. Ava signed where Sharon pointed date initials date again. The pen felt heavy. On the way out, Ava paused at the bulletin board where staff photos were pinned beside emergency numbers. Grayson's portrait was there, formal composed. Ava looked at it too long. She left the office and went straight to the skills lab as if movement could keep thoughts from catching her. The lab smelled like plastic and disinfectant, fake tissue, and old rubber. Ava set up a suture pad and forced herself to practice basic slow throws, deliberate tension hands that hesitated. She could feel the urge to be clean, to be fast, to let the muscle memory take over. She fought it like it was a reflex she could not afford. A door opened behind her. Ava did not turn right away. She heard the pause of someone watching. "Still here," Grayson said. Ava set down the needle driver carefully. "Yes, sir." Grayson stepped into her line of sight. Without the OR lights, his face looked older. The skin around his eyes creased. His gaze flicked over the instruments, the suture, the neat pile of cut ends. "You're practicing basics," he said. "Yes." Good, Grayson said, then paused. "Bad habits start early." Ava nodded, keeping her expression neutral. Grayson didn't leave. He leaned against a counter, arms folded. "You know why I asked for your file?" Ava kept her eyes on the suture pad. "Because I'm new." "Don't insult me," Grayson said quietly. Ava's grip tightened. She set the instrument down to keep her hands still. Grayson's voice lowered. "That technique yesterday, the park sequence, it isn't in our curriculum. You moved like someone who has done it more than once." Ava took a slow breath. "I had mentors," she said. "Names," Grayson said. Ava's throat tightened. "I can't." Grayson pushed off the counter, took one step closer. "You are in my rooms," he said. "I need to know who trained you. Not because I'm curious, because I'm responsible." Ava met his gaze steady. "I understand." Grayson's eyes narrowed, then softened in a way that felt almost accidental. "Do you?" he said. "Because I've watched gifted residents break in this place, and I've watched people hide things until the hiding does the damage." Ava's mouth tightened. "I'm not trying to damage anyone." Grayson studied her a beat longer. "Then don't give me reasons to worry," he said. He left without another word. Ava sat down hard on the stool after he was gone, staring at the plastic tissue under her hands. Her pulse beat in her throat. The room felt too bright, too clean. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't check it until she was back in the stairwell. Same unknown number. "You are getting watched." Ava typed back before she could stop herself. "I know," the reply came. "Then stop giving them reasons." Ava stared at the words until her eyes burned, then deleted them. That night, she was on call. The call room mattress was thin. The pillow smelled of bleach and the air was too dry. She lay on her back with her hands on her stomach, listening to the building breathe through vents and pipes. Sleep hovered, then refused to land. A page cracked through the quiet. "Surgery, consult ED." Ava pulled on shoes and walked fast through halls that never fully went dark. In the emergency department, the noise hit like heat. A nurse snapped gloves on. A paramedic pushed a gurney past her boots, leaving wet prints on the floor. A man argued with a receptionist. A child cried. Ava cleared the consult, then another. Work was easier than thinking. Near the end of her shift, she stopped by the trauma bay to drop off labs. The bay was empty equipment lined up, clean lights harsh and ready. It felt like staring into a storm cellar after the warning siren, waiting to find out if the wind would come. Maddox was there, hair messy, coffee in hand. He watched her with an expression that tried to be casual and failed. "Grayson talked to you," he said. Ava did not answer. Maddox nodded anyway. "You can ignore me," he said, "but you cannot ignore the way people are looking at you." Ava's voice stayed quiet. "Let them look." Maddox's gaze flicked to her hands. "They're not looking at your face." Ava set the lab slip on the counter. "Then they should mind their own cases." Maddox leaned closer, dropping his voice. If your story is clean, tell it. If it's not, fix it. Because Grayson does not like unknowns in his rooms. Ava met his eyes. Some things don't get fixed. For a beat, Maddox looked like he wanted to ask more. Then he stepped back. Fine, he said. Just don't drag the rest of us into whatever you're hiding. Ava watched him go, then turned back to the trauma bay. Bright lights. Empty bed. Neat instruments. A place built for emergencies that felt almost peaceful when no one was dying. Ava checked the cart the way she checked everything when she needed her mind to stay in the present. She touched the laryngoscope handle, counted the suction canisters, traced the clean line of a clamp rack with the edge of her glove. It was absurd, the comfort she found in order. In places she did not talk about order had been a luxury, and the lack of it had been paid for in blood. Across the hall, Monica Reed was swapping out a bag of fluids, moving with the brisk economy of someone who had seen too much to waste motion. She glanced at Ava. "You're on trauma if it comes," Monica said. Ava nodded. "I'm here." Monica's gaze held a second longer. "Stay in your lane," she added, not unkindly. "And if your lane disappears, don't freeze." Ava felt her pulse quicken. Not fear. Readiness sharp as cold air. The intercom clicked on overhead tone crisp, and practiced the kind that tightened every spine. "Trauma alert," the voice said. "Inbound in 5 minutes." Ava's pager vibrated at the same moment, sharp and insistent against her hip. The trauma bay woke up like a kicked beehive. Curtains snapped open. Wheels squealed. A tech shoved a warmer into place. Monica Reed's voice cut through the noise with the calm of someone who refused to be rattled. 2 units uncrossed to the room, now. Ava was already at the foot of the bed, tying her gown with fingers that did not fumble. The intercom's warning tone still hung in the air, vibrating in her bones. 5 minutes was not time. 5 minutes was a threat. The ambulance doors burst open, and cold air rushed in with the gurney. The patient's face was gray under the ceiling lights. Eyes half open, mouth working like he wanted to speak but could not afford the breath. "Male, late 20s, the paramedic called out. "Rollover on I-25. Prolonged extrication. Hypotensive on scene, transient response to fluids. Abdomen distended. Pelvis unstable. 1 liter in pressure dropped again." Monitors were slapped on, a cuff inflated, numbers flashed then slid lower. 74/40, the nurse said. "Heart rate 140, another voice added. Ava watched the patient's hands. The fingers were cold and curled, the nails dirty with road grit. The kind of detail that did not matter except it always mattered. She had learned that in places where nobody wrote notes and nobody coded billing. Ava leaned close enough to hear the patient's breath. It sounded wet thin, like paper tearing. "What's your name?" she asked softly. His lips trembled. A whisper came out. "Drew." Ava nodded once as if she could hold him to the world with a name. "Okay, Drew, stay with us." A trauma surgeon stepped into the bay, and the room shifted around him the way metal shifts around a magnet. Dr. Thomas Grayson did not hurry. He did not need to. His presence made speed. His eyes flicked over the patient, the monitor, the ultrasound machine being rolled in. He pulled on gloves with one sharp snap. "Airway," he said. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Priya Desai, moved to the head of the bed. "I've got him." Grayson pointed. "Fast, now." A tech smeared gel on Drew's abdomen. The ultrasound probe slid over skin that was already modeling. The screen bloomed with shadow. "Free fluid," the tech said. Grayson's jaw tightened. "Call OR3, Massive Transfusion Protocol." Monica was already moving, or 3 is being turned. Grayson looked at Ava for the first time since entering his gaze, landing like a weight. "Dr. Carter, you are with me." Ava's mouth went dry. "Yes, sir." Nina Brooks appeared at Grayson's shoulder like she had been summoned by ego alone. "I can scrub in." Grayson did not look at her. "Dr. Brooks, you run the list upstairs. Keep the floor from burning." Nina's expression cracked for half a second. It was not anger, it was insult. "Yes, sir," she said and peeled away. Leo Maddox took a step forward. I can take lead assist. Grayson's eyes flicked to him. You can help. You will not lead. Not today. Maddox pressed his lips together. Understood. Ava watched all of it like a weather pattern. The choices. The power. The way people swallowed pride because pride was a luxury the bleeding did not care about. Desai's voice rose. He's losing it. He's altered. Grayson leaned in close to Drew's face. Drew, we're taking you to surgery. Hear me. You stay with me. Drew's eyes rolled toward him unfocused, then toward Ava. Ava held his gaze a fraction longer than Grayson did. There was fear in it, naked and simple. Ava squeezed Drew's hand once hard enough that he could feel it. You're not alone, she said. Grayson's head turned slightly like he heard it. He did not comment. The gurney moved. Doors pushed open. The corridor blurred into fluorescent streaks. Ava jogged alongside, keeping one hand on the rail, the other free for whatever the next second demanded. The hospital's rhythm shifted as they moved through it. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. People stepped aside as if the gurney carried a storm. In the elevator, the air was too close. Drew moaned once, a sound that made Desai glance at the monitor and then at Grayson. Pressure is dropping, Desai said. Grayson stared at the numbers. Give blood. Desai nodded. Blood is running. Ava watched Drew's chest rise and fall, fighting for space. She heard the elevator's hum. It was a civilized sound. It did not belong in moments like this. The doors opened on the surgical floor. OR3 stood ready. The lights bright, the table draped, the instruments laid out like a promise. The team poured in. Scrub techs moved with quick hands. Monica's voice followed them steady. 2 units hanging. Cooler coming in, labs sent. Ava scrubbed in. Water, soap, heat. The ritual that made you believe you could control what came next. Her hands were steady, but her stomach felt like it was falling down a long stairwell. She stepped into the gown. Gloves snapped over her wrists. Grayson was already at the table. He glanced at Desai. We stable enough to cut. Desai did not sugarcoat. Not stable, alive, barely. Grayson nodded like that was plenty. Knife. The first incision opened skin, and the room tilted into a different kind of quiet. Drew's abdomen parted, and blood welled up with the slow confidence of something that had already won. Suction, Grayson said. The scrub tech placed the tip in his hand. The canister began to fill with a dark rush. Ava took her position where Grayson pointed. Her job was simple. Retract, expose, make space for the surgeon's hands. Grayson's hands moved fast but not frantic. He packed with sponges, pressing, lifting, searching. Liver, Maddox said, leaning in. Grayson's eyes narrowed. It's more than liver. Ava stared at the field and felt her throat tighten. The bleeding was not the bright splash of a surface tear. It was deep and central. A steady surge that ignored pressure, the kind that did not pause to let you catch up. Grayson shoved more packing in. We temporize. Call vascular. Call IR. Desai's voice cut in. Pressure 58. Grayson pressed harder, jaw clenched. Squeeze, more blood. The room was full of action, and still Ava saw something that made her stomach go cold. The pattern. The direction. The way the blood pooled. The injury was not cooperating with the plan. Her mind offered an image she had not asked for. A canvas roof shaking. A generator coughing. A man's voice in the dark, calm as prayer. Not there, not now. Ava swallowed. She forced herself to stay in this bright room with clean floors and rules. Grayson's voice snapped. Retractor higher. Ava adjusted lifting tissue gently, trying to create the view Grayson needed. The blood kept coming. Maddox shifted. We can clamp, maybe. Grayson's eyes flashed. Maybe is not a plan. Ava felt her heart beat once hard. She watched Grayson pack again. Watched the blood seep around his efforts like water around a fist. If they waited for vascular, Drew would be dead before the elevator reached the floor. Ava heard herself speak before she could stop it. Packing will not hold, she said. The room did not stop moving, but the air changed. Grayson did not look up. I'm aware. It's central. Ava said quieter, trying to keep her voice from shaking. It's not tamponating, he's still dumping. Desai's voice rose again. Pressure 49. Grayson's jaw tightened. We are buying time. Ava stared at the bleeding and felt anger flare hot and sharp, not at Grayson's skill, but at the idea of buying time with someone else's life. We are not buying time, she said. We are spending it. Maddox's head snapped toward her. The scrub tech's eyes widened. Even the circulating nurse hesitated, one gloved hand hovering over a tray. Grayson turned his head slowly, like he was forced to acknowledge a sound he did not want in his room. Dr. Carter, he said, voice low. Ava met his gaze. She could feel everyone watching, waiting for her to fold. I can see the junction, she said. It needs isolation and repair. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Step back. Ava did not move. Desai's voice cut in strained now. He's going into arrest. The monitor's tone changed faster, sharper, warning without mercy. Ava's breath went shallow. The room started to feel like it used to feel, a circle of light in a sea of darkness. A man bleeding. A decision that had to be made before anyone finished speaking. Grayson barked. Episode now. Desai moved. Epi in. Grayson shoved the packing aside and pressed his hand deeper, trying to compress the source. Blood slid around his glove and onto the drapes. Ava's body went still in that way it did when fear tried to take over and discipline took its place. Let me do the isolation, she said. Grayson looked at her like she had slapped him. You are a first year. Ava heard her own voice, even and dangerous. And he is dying. Grayson's nostrils flared. Maddox looked between them, caught unsure whose side survival belonged to. Dr. Carter, Grayson said, voice like a warning. This is not a classroom. Ava leaned in, not touching, not overreaching, just close enough to be seen. I have seen this, she said, this exact pattern. Grayson's eyes sharpened. Where? Ava did not answer. She did not have time to lie well. Desai's voice cracked. We are losing a pulse. The room narrowed to a point. Grayson stared at the field, then at Ava's hands, then at the monitor. He made a choice that cost him something. Ava saw it in the set of his shoulders. Fine, he said. You have one chance. Ava did not thank him. She did not nod. She simply moved because motion was the only language the dying understood. Retractor, she said, and the scrub tech hesitated for a fraction of a second before placing it in her hand. Ava did not glance up. She placed it with precision, opening the field without tearing. Grayson stepped half an inch back, still close, still ready to take over, but letting her in. Ava's eyes tracked the anatomy with a calm that surprised even her. She placed a clamp where it mattered, not with the nervous hesitation of a trainee, but with the careful confidence of someone who had been corrected by consequences. Maddox stared. What are you doing? Ava's voice stayed low, making a window. She asked for suction and guided it. She used a sponge to clear just enough blood to see the true source. There. The tear was not where Grayson had been compressing. It was deeper tucked where panic made you look away. Ava felt her pulse steady the way it did when everything else went wrong, and the work became simple. Grayson leaned in, eyes following her hands. That approach requires temporary control. Ava did not look at him. Yes, sir. She reached for the next instrument without asking twice. The scrub tech, wide-eyed now, placed it into her palm like she had been trained by Ava's certainty. Ava controlled inflow and outflow the way you close doors in a storm. Not fully, not recklessly, just enough. The bleeding slowed for the first time since they opened. Desai's voice came cautious. Pressure is holding 55. Ava could feel the whole room breathe with her. She placed the stitch, then another, precise and unforgiving. She felt the tissue resist, then accept. Her hands did not shake, not because she did not feel fear, but because she knew what fear cost if you let it take your fingers. Maddox's voice dropped. That is not normal. Grayson said nothing. His face had gone still the way it did when something he believed in was being challenged by the evidence of his own eyes. Ava kept going. She did not rush. She did not dawdle. Each movement was economical. Each choice was deliberate. The room around her fell quiet except for the monitor and the soft sound of suction. When she tied the final knot, the field stayed dry. For half a second, no one moved. Then Desai spoke softer now, almost disbelieving. "Pressure is 82. A nurse let out a breath she had been holding. The scrub tech's shoulders sagged. Grayson stared at the repair. His eyes traveled from the tissue to Ava's hands, as if the answer might be written in her skin. Ava stepped back 1 inch, letting him see, letting him confirm what she already knew. Grayson's voice came out rougher than before. That was the park sequence. The room stayed silent. Even Maddox stopped shifting. Grayson's gaze did not leave Ava. "I have seen it performed twice," he said. "Both times by Elias Park." Ava felt the name hit her like cold water. Her throat tightened. She kept her face blank because she had practiced blank until it became armor. Grayson leaned closer, not for the room, not for the residents, but for her. "Who trained you?" he said. Ava's mind raced through options and found none that did not lead to fire. "I learned in the field," she said. Grayson's eyes hardened. "No." Ava swallowed. "Yes." Grayson straightened, suddenly aware of the team, the patient, the fact that an audience had been created. He pulled off his gloves with a snap and tossed them into the bin like he was done with the performance of calm. "Maddox," he said, "you close." Maddox blinked. "Yes, sir." Grayson turned to Ava. "You, with me." Ava's stomach dropped. She followed him out of the OR, still gloved, still gowned, feeling eyes burn into her back as the doors swung closed behind them. The hallway outside OR3 was cooler, quieter, lined with framed photos of donor dinners and groundbreaking ceremonies. The kind of hallway that pretended medicine was clean. Grayson walked fast. Ava kept pace. They reached a small alcove near the scrub sinks. Grayson turned sharply. How he said, voice low enough to be private and sharp enough to cut. "How do you know Park's work?" Ava stood with her hands held away from her body, gloved and damp like a person waiting to be searched. "I told you," she said. "I had mentors." "Name's Grayson," said. Ava's jaw tightened. "I cannot." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "You can, you will not." Ava felt her pulse hammer. The instinct to protect was automatic, trained into her like muscle memory. Protect the people still out there. Protect the work that did not fit in hospitals and policies. Protect the ghost. Grayson took a step closer. "You understand what you just did," he said. "You understand what it means when a first year performs a signature technique of a surgeon who changed trauma surgery. You understand what it means for licensing, for privileges, for liability." Ava kept her voice even. "It means the patient is alive." Grayson's mouth tightened. "It means you are an unknown variable in my operating rooms." Ava met his gaze. "I'm not unknown," she said. "I'm standing right here." Grayson stared at her for a long beat. Then he looked away as if the hallway itself had suddenly become interesting. "Take those off," he said, gesturing at her gloves. Ava peeled them away, dropped them in the bin. Her hands were slightly red from scrubbing the skin rougher than it should have been for someone who lived in a modern hospital. Grayson noticed. His gaze flicked over her knuckles, the small scars that did not match clean training. "You have marks," he said. Ava kept her hands still. "Everyone has marks." Grayson's eyes sharpened. "Not like that." Ava said nothing. Down the hall, a nurse laughed at something, a quick burst of sound that felt wrong in the wake of near death. Ava's ears caught it anyway. Her body stayed wound tight, waiting for the next impact. Grayson's voice dropped again. What mission, he asked. Ava chose the safest half-truth she had. "Small clinics," she said. "Short-term, places with limited resources." Grayson's eyes did not soften. "That is not an answer." Ava stared at the wall behind him, where a framed photo showed Grayson smiling beside a state senator holding a shovel over dirt. The kind of image that suggested control. "I am not lying," Ava said. Grayson's laugh was a short sound with no humor. "If you are not lying, then you are hiding, and hiding is a form of risk." Ava felt anger flare again, sharper now. "What would you have me do?" she asked quietly. "Let him die so you would not have questions." Grayson's eyes flashed. "Do not put words in my mouth." Ava held his gaze. "Then stop acting like your paperwork matters more than blood." The silence that followed was thick. Grayson's expression changed not to warmth, but to something like grudging respect mixed with warning. "Be careful," he said. Ava's voice stayed low. "I was." Grayson leaned in slightly. "No," he said. "I mean, be careful with what you just became in this building." Ava felt the weight of that. A story, a rumor, a target. Maddox came out of the OR, then, still gowned eyes, bright with adrenaline, and something else. He slowed when he saw them, then kept walking as if he knew better than to step into the space between Ava and Grayson. Ava watched him pass. She could feel his curiosity like heat. Grayson followed her gaze. "They will talk," he said. Ava's throat tightened. "Let them." Grayson's eyes hardened. "No. They will talk to people who talk to people. This hospital is a small town with better shoes." Ava did not respond. Grayson turned away, then back. "Go change," he said. "Then come to my office." Ava nodded once. In the locker room, Nina was waiting. Not alone. Two other residents stood nearby pretending to scroll through phones. They were not pretending well. Nina's eyes raked over Ava. "So," she said, "you saved him." Ava reached for her locker. "The team saved him." Nina's smile was thin. "Grayson doesn't let teams do that. He lets legends do that." Ava pulled off her gown. The fabric stuck to her scrub top. She worked it free without haste. Maddox came in behind Nina, hair damp from sweat, face pale under fluorescent light. "Brooks," he said, warning in his tone. Nina glanced at him. What she said? "We are just talking." Ava kept her eyes down, changing in silence. She felt like prey under polite conversation. Nina stepped closer. "Park sequence," she said, almost reverent, almost mocking. "That is what Grayson called it." Ava folded her gown. "I did what needed to be done." Nina's eyes sharpened. "Where did you learn it?" Ava shut her locker. "In the field." Nina's laugh was sharper this time. "You keep saying that like it is supposed to mean something." Ava looked at her, then truly looked. Nina's eyes were tired under the aggression. Her hands had small tremors from too much caffeine and too little sleep. "It means you do not get to pick your teachers," Ava said. "Sometimes you get whoever shows up." Nina's face tightened. "Stop talking like you are above us." Ava's voice stayed calm. "I am not above you." Nina leaned in close enough that Ava could smell peppermint gum. "Then prove it," she said. "Tell the truth." Ava's chest tightened. She wanted to say something that would make Nina back away. She wanted to tell her to mind her own life. She wanted to tell her that truth was not a coin you handed out in a hallway. Instead, she said, "I have a meeting." Nina's eyes flicked to Maddox, then back to Ava. "Grayson," she said, "he's going to cut you open." Ava slid her badge on the plastic cool against her chest. "He can try." Nina's expression flashed with something like satisfaction, as if she had been waiting to hear defiance. Ava walked out without looking back. Grayson's office sat on the 4th floor behind a frosted glass door that said Chief of Surgery in clean lettering. The hallway outside was carpeted quiet, the kind of quiet bought with money. Ava stood for a beat with her hand on the door, breathing. The whisper returned not as sound now, but as a pressure behind her ribs. "Who trained you?" She knocked. "Come in," Grayson's voice called. The office smelled like leather and old books, and coffee that had been sitting too long. Diplomas lined the wall. Photos, too. Grayson at conferences. Grayson beside famous names. Grayson holding a plaque, smiling in a way that looked practiced. He stood behind his desk, no longer in surgical gear, white coat on sleeves rolled. He looked like power again. Ava stayed by the door. Grayson gestured to the chair. "Sit." Ava sat. Her posture stayed straight, hands in her lap. Grayson did not sit. He paced, once slow controlled, then stopped and faced her. "I am going to ask you a question," he said. and I am going to ask it exactly once in here. Ava held his gaze. Okay. Grayson's voice lowered. Who taught you the park sequence? Ava's mouth went dry. I told you, she said. I learned in the field. Grayson's eyes narrowed. No, he said. You learned from someone who learned from Park. Or from Park himself. Ava felt the name like a knife. She kept her face blank. Grayson leaned forward, palms on the desk. You are 27, he said. You are a first-year resident. You performed a technique that most attendings cannot execute under perfect conditions. And you did it under blood, under time, under pressure. Ava's heartbeat thudded in her throat. Grayson's gaze sharpened. Either you are lying about your background, he said, or you are connected to something you are not telling this hospital. Ava's voice stayed quiet. I'm not lying. Grayson's mouth tightened. Then you are hiding. Ava's fingers curled in her lap. Yes, she said, and the admission tasted like metal. Grayson blinked once as if he did not expect honesty. What are you hiding? He asked. Ava looked at the diplomas, at the photos, at a framed newspaper article on the wall about Grayson's surgical innovations. The article was glossy and proud. It lived in a world where truth had press releases. I can't tell you, Ava said. Grayson's expression darkened. You can. Ava shook her head once. I won't. Grayson's gaze locked on her. Do you understand what this does? He asked, voice rising slightly. If you learn techniques through unauthorized channels, it raises questions. Credentialing, supervision, liability, patient safety. Ava's eyes did not flinch. Patient safety is why I did it, she said. Grayson's jaw tightened. Do not twist this into a speech. Ava's voice stayed steady. It isn't a speech, it's the truth. Grayson stared at her a long beat, then exhaled through his nose. He moved to his chair and sat slower now. The anger edged with something else. I have been doing this for 40 years, he said. I have seen gifted people. I have seen reckless people. I have seen liars. I have seen heroes. The problem is you could be any of them. Ava swallowed. I'm a resident, she said, trying to do my job. Grayson's eyes hardened. Your job is not to freelance. Ava's voice dropped. My job is to keep people alive. Grayson's gaze held hers. And that is why I cannot ignore you. The phone on his desk rang. Grayson's head turned slightly annoyed. He picked it up. Grayson, he said. Ava watched his face change as he listened the way it changed in the OR when the stakes shifted. The irritation disappeared. The focus returned. He listened another moment, then said, How many? Where? All right. He hung up and looked at Ava. Construction collapse downtown, he said. Multiple incoming. Mass casualty. Ava's stomach tightened. Grayson stood already reaching for his coat. We are done talking for now, he said. He paused at the door hand on the handle and looked back at her. This is not over, he said, voice quiet but absolute. And you will not do that in my rooms again without my permission. Ava stood. If someone is dying, she said, I will do what I can. Grayson stared at her, then opened the door. Then you better be sure, he said, because next time I will be watching. Ava stepped into the hallway as the hospital's emergency tone sounded again, faster this time, more urgent. Nurses ran past. Gurneys rolled. The building shifted into crisis mode like it had a switch. Ava moved with the flow toward the elevators, her heart steady in a way that felt wrong. She should have been shaken. Instead, she felt clear. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Unknown number. You were too visible. Ava did not stop walking. She did not slow. She did not look around. She slid the phone out and read as she moved. She typed back with one thumb. He was dying. The reply came immediately. That is why you cannot do it like that. Ava's throat tightened. She deleted the thread without hesitation, then shoved the phone back into her pocket the way you shove a weapon away before someone sees it. The elevator doors opened. Monica Reed was inside, face pale but composed. "Or is filling," Monica said. "They are stacking them." Ava stepped in. The doors closed. The elevator dropped. Ava stared at the metal wall and saw her reflection faintly layered over the fluorescent glare. Her eyes looked older than 12 days in a hospital should make them. Monica glanced at her. "Grayson took you upstairs," she said. Ava did not answer. Monica's voice softened a fraction. "You did good work," she said. "But good work makes noise." Ava swallowed. "I know." Monica nodded once. "Then keep your head," she said. "Mass casualty eats everybody." The elevator opened onto the emergency floor and the noise hit like a wave. Voices, footsteps, radios, a shouted count. Someone crying. Ava stepped out into it, pulled her gloves tighter, and ran toward the first stretcher as it rolled, and the smell of dust and blood and concrete filling the air. Drew's face flashed in her mind, then disappeared under the weight of the next living problem in front of her. She reached the stretcher and looked down at a woman with gray skin and wide eyes, dust in her hair, blood at her temple. The woman grabbed Ava's sleeve with a hand that trembled. "Please," she said. Ava leaned close. "I'm here," she said, voice steady. "I'm right here." The woman's fingers clutched Ava's sleeve with surprising strength, nails rimmed with concrete dust. Her eyes were wide pupils blown a panic that had nowhere to go. "Please," she said again, voice thin as paper. Ava leaned close enough that the woman could feel breath and presence instead of chaos. "You're safe in this room," Ava said. "Tell me your name." "Marisol." "Okay, Marisol." Ava kept her voice steady and low. "Look at me. Just me." Behind Ava, the emergency department roared. Stretchers rolled in a tight line, one after another, wheels clicking over seams in the floor. Radios crackled. Nurses called out blood types and pressures. Someone shouted for a trauma surgeon. Someone else shouted back that every trauma surgeon was already buried. Ava's gloved hand found Marisol's wrist, pulse fast-thready trying to disappear. "Any pain in your belly?" Ava asked. Marisol's chin trembled. "I can't breathe." Ava glanced at the chest rise. Shallow. Fast. She looked at the bruising on Marisol's collarbone, the way one shoulder sat slightly higher than the other. "Monica," Ava called. Monica Reed was already there, snapping on another pair of gloves. "Talk to me. Get Desai to look at her airway and breathing." Ava said, "I want a quick chest check. She's compensating." Monica nodded once and moved barking orders without raising her voice. Monica's calm had weight. People listened. Ava lifted Marisol's chin gently. "You're doing great," she said. "Stay with me." Marisol blinked, hard tears cutting tracks through dust. "My sister was next to me." Ava felt the words land heavy and helpless. She didn't let it show. "What's your sister's name?" Ava asked. "Lena." Ava nodded. "We're going to look for Lena. Right now, we take care of you." Marisol's grip tightened. "Don't let me die." Ava held her gaze. "I'm not leaving you." A gurney slammed into a wall. A man yelled. A child cried with a sound that did not stop for breath. The smell of dust and blood and sweat filled the room thicker than the usual antiseptic. Dr. Thomas Grayson appeared at the center of it like a fixed point. He wasn't in a white coat now. He was in scrubs, sleeves pushed up, hands already gloved, eyes moving like he was reading a map only he could see. "Who's triaging abdominal?" he called. Ava raised a hand. "I am." Grayson's gaze snapped to her sharp and quick. "You have a surgeon with you." "Not enough," Monica muttered under her breath. Grayson ignored the comment and stepped closer. He looked down at Marisol, then at Ava. "Vitals. Pressure 90/50 and sliding," Ava said. "Fast pulse. Shallow breathing. Bruising across the upper chest. Possible internal bleed, possible pneumothorax. She's holding for now." Grayson's eyes flicked to Marisol's abdomen. Tender. Marisol made a small sound that could have been pain or fear. Grayson nodded once. Faster. Ava reached for the ultrasound. Her hands did not shake. The gel was cold against Marisol's skin, and Marisol flinched. "It's cold," Ava said. "You're okay." The screen lit up with gray and black. Ava moved the probe scanning, watching for what mattered. Fluid, shadow, a line where there should be none. Her stomach tightened. Free fluid, Ava said. Grayson leaned in for half a second, then straightened. Operating room 4, he said. Now. Monica was already calling it out. Or 4 for Marisol, move. The gurney rolled. Ava walked beside it, keeping one hand near Marisol's shoulder a tether. Marisol's eyes darted from face to face, drowning in strangers. Ava kept talking, not to fill silence, but to keep Marisol anchored. You're going to feel people touch you. You're going to hear a lot of voices. That's normal. You stay with me. Marisol's lips moved. Lena. I heard you, Ava said. We're going to find her. They hit the elevator with 2 other gurneys, and a nurse riding the doors, palm out, to keep anyone else from trying to squeeze in. The elevator was too small for this much emergency. Breath and fear warmed the air. Ava glanced at the other patient, a man with a swollen leg wrapped in makeshift splints, face pale, eyes closed. His chest rose unevenly. Another nurse held a bag valve mask, squeezing rhythm into him. Monica's eyes met Ava's. They're stacking, Monica said. Ava nodded. I know. The doors opened on the surgical floor, and noise followed them out like a tide. Scrub techs ran. A cooler of blood slid across the floor on a cart. A resident shouted for more suction canisters. They rolled Marisol into operating room 4. Inside, Dr. Leo Maddox was already there, tying his mask, eyes bright with that mix of adrenaline and pride that came with being useful. He looked up when Ava entered, and something in his expression shifted, quick and guarded. Carter, he said. Ava didn't answer with anything beyond a nod. She moved to the sink, scrubbing fast and thorough. Water splashed her forearms. The soap stung the small cracks in her skin. Maddox's voice drifted over the sound of running water. Grayson, put you on this one. I'm here, Ava said. Maddox gave a short laugh. Yeah, you keep being here at the worst times. Ava finished scrubbing and stepped into the gown. Gloves snapped on. She moved to the table where Marisol was being positioned, her hair pushed back, her face pale under bright lights. Dr. Priya Desai slid in at the head of the bed, calm but brisk. Pressure is dropping, she said. I'm going to intubate. Ava leaned close to Marisol's face. You're going to go to sleep, she said. When you wake up, this part will be done. Marisol's eyes flicked to hers. My sister. Ava's throat tightened. We're looking, she said. I promise. Desai induced anesthesia. Marisol's gaze went soft, then disappeared behind closed lids. The room got quieter in a way that was almost cruel. Maddox took the scalpel. Knife, he said, voice steady. He cut. Blood welled. Not as catastrophic as Drew's had been, but enough to tighten the room. Suction, Maddox said. Ava held retractors, exposing, watching Maddox's hands. He was skilled. He moved with confidence. But confidence was different than clarity. Maddox explored, packed, lifted, searched. Spleen is bruised, he said. Liver looks okay. There's blood tracking down. Ava's eyes followed the tracking. The blood wasn't sitting where it should. It was moving somewhere deeper, slipping behind structures, refusing to present itself. Desai spoke. Pressure 70, heart rate 130. Maddox frowned. She's bleeding somewhere I can't see. Ava felt the familiar edge in her chest. That sensation of time narrowing. Maddox packed harder. We need more exposure. Ava adjusted. It's not just exposure, she said quietly. Maddox glanced at her. What? Ava kept her eyes on the field. The blood is retroperitoneal, she said. It's hiding. Maddox's jaw tightened. I know what retroperitoneal means. Ava nodded once. Then you know packing won't find it. Maddox's eyes flashed. You want to drive again? Ava didn't answer. She watched the blood seep around Maddox's packing like it had a plan of its own. Desai's voice came again, tighter. Pressure 65. Maddox cursed under his breath. I can't get to the source. The anatomy is a mess. Ava stared into the wound and saw the path the blood took, the way tissue lifted, the way the body tried to protect itself by hiding its own damage. She heard that voice in her memory again, calm and precise, as if nothing outside the tent mattered. Make the world smaller. Make it only this. Ava inhaled slowly. Let me try, she said. Maddox's head snapped toward her. No. Desai cut in, voice sharp. She's not holding. Do something. Maddox stared at the monitor, then back at the field. His pride fought with the numbers. The numbers won. He stepped aside 1 inch. Fine, he said. Show me. Ava didn't reach in like someone stealing. She moved like someone invited. She repositioned the retractors not just higher, but differently, creating a corridor with intention. Maddox watched tense. What are you doing? Ava kept her voice low, opening a door. She mobilized tissue, carefully rotating structures the way a person rotates a heavy object in a tight room, slow enough not to break anything, fast enough not to waste time. She used her fingers as much as instruments, feeling planes reading resistance. This was not something she learned from diagrams. This was something she learned from consequences. Maddox's mouth fell slightly open. That's not in the basic playbook. Ava didn't look at him, no. She reached deeper, found the source, a vessel torn where it shouldn't be torn, bleeding into a space that swallowed light. Ava's heart rate stayed steady. She placed a clamp with a small controlled movement. The bleeding slowed. Desai's voice shifted, surprised. Pressure is stabilizing. Ava held the field, asked for a stitch, and repaired what could be repaired, not beautifully, not for show, but solid and true. When she finished, the wound stayed quieter. The blood stopped trying to escape. Maddox stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Where did you learn that? He asked. Ava's throat tightened. She didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing it. In training, she said. Maddox let out a short laugh that wasn't humor. Training where? Ava looked up then, just once, and met his eyes. Not here, she said. Maddox's face hardened, but he didn't push. He turned back to the patient and began closing, hands moving faster now that the panic had eased. The doors to the operating room opened. Dr. Thomas Grayson stood in the doorway, still in scrubs, still wearing that hard calm. His eyes were fixed on the field, then on Ava. Ava felt a cold drop in her stomach. Not fear. Recognition. She had been seen. Grayson didn't speak to Maddox. He didn't speak to the nurse. His gaze stayed on Ava like a hook. Dr. Carter, he said, a word. Maddox swallowed. She just saved your patient. Grayson's eyes flicked to him for half a second. Close, he said, and then looked back at Ava, now. Ava stepped away from the table, peeling her gloves off as she walked, dropping them into the bin without slowing. She followed Grayson out into the scrub room where the lights were bright and the sound of running water made everything feel more private than it was. Grayson turned on the tap and shoved his hands under scrubbing as if the friction could grind patience into existence. Ava stood opposite him, hands wet red still. Grayson didn't look up. I made calls, he said. Ava's chest tightened. About what? About you, Grayson said. Ava kept her face neutral. My references are fine. I know, Grayson said. Your medical school is legitimate. Your grades are real. Your letters are real. He finally looked at her, water running between them. But your gap is not. Ava felt the words hit heavy and specific. 2 years, Grayson continued. No program can tell me where you were. No attending claims you. No organization has your name. Ava's mouth went dry. Records get lost. Grayson's eyes narrowed. Not like this. He shut off the tap and turned water dripping from his fingers. You said outreach outside Goma. I contacted every major group that operates in that region. Ava didn't blink. Maybe I wasn't with a major group. Grayson's jaw tightened. Exactly. Ava felt the room tilt. She held her posture. I went where I was needed. Grayson stared at her, then spoke quieter. I have seen surgeons who come from military medicine, he said. I have seen people who have worked in places they cannot name. They carry themselves a certain way. His eyes traveled over Ava's hands again, the small scars, the calluses that came from too much work and too little time. You have that, he said. Ava swallowed. Grayson stepped closer, voice low. "Were you in conflict zones?" he asked. Ava's instinct screamed to deny. Denial was safety. Denial was the story she had written for herself and repeated until it almost felt true. But the hospital had cameras. The hospital had records. And Grayson had eyes. Ava exhaled slowly. "Yes," she said, "I was." Grayson's expression didn't soften. It sharpened, like the answer confirmed a suspicion that carried weight. "Unauthorized work in conflict zones is illegal," he said. Ava met his gaze. "So is letting people die when you could stop it." Grayson's nostrils flared. "Do not turn this into a debate." Ava's voice stayed even. "It's not a debate, it's what happened." Grayson studied her a long beat. "Who recruited you?" he asked. "Who sent a newly graduated physician into that?" Ava's jaw tightened. "No one sent me." Grayson's eyebrows rose slightly. "You went alone." "I volunteered," Ava said. "I found a team." I said yes. Grayson's eyes narrowed. "And this team taught you Park's work." Ava felt her pulse jump. The name again, the way it pulled at the edges of everything. Grayson turned, grabbed his phone, and scrolled, then held it up. On the screen was an article. A photo. A familiar face and grayscale eyes, calm mouth said in a line that knew too much. Elias Park. Grayson's voice dropped. "Park's last recorded mission was in East Africa," he said. "Around the same time you disappeared from paper." Ava's throat tightened. Grayson watched her closely. "Did you know him?" he asked. Ava stared at the photo and felt the old world flash behind her eyes, the heat, the dust, the sound that came before the blast. A man's hands guiding hers. A voice saying again and again, steady, "Do it until you can do it when you are terrified." Ava blinked once and forced herself back into the bright scrub room. "I can't answer that," she said. Grayson's eyes hardened. "You can," he said. "You won't." Ava's phone vibrated in her pocket, a small angry buzz that felt too loud in the quiet. Grayson noticed. His gaze flicked down. "Who is that?" he asked. Ava didn't move. "Oh, one." The buzzing stopped, then started again, more insistent. Ava's fingers curled. She pulled the phone out, not because she wanted to, but because the vibration felt like a countdown. Unknown number. "He is digging." Ava's stomach dropped. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Grayson's voice cut in. "Dr. Carter." Ava looked up. Grayson's eyes were locked on her phone now. Ava's pulse hammered. She slid the phone into her pocket without replying. Grayson stepped closer. "You are getting messages," he said, voice low. Ava kept her face still. "Everyone gets messages." Grayson's laugh was short, sharp. "Not like that," he said. "Not in the middle of my investigation." Ava met his gaze. "Then stop investigating," she said softly. Grayson's eyes flashed. "That is not your call." Ava's mouth tightened. "You're right." Grayson stared at her for a long beat. Then he stepped back as if he needed distance to think. "I'm not trying to ruin you," he said, quieter now. "I'm trying to make sure I know who is operating in my rooms." Ava's throat tightened. "You know," she said. "You've watched me." "That's not enough," Grayson replied. "Skill is not the only thing that matters." Ava held his gaze. "It was enough for Marisol," she said. Grayson's jaw worked. He looked past her toward the door, where muffled voices and footsteps reminded them that the building was still on fire. "Go back in," he said. "Finish that case." Ava didn't move, and then Grayson's eyes returned to hers. "Then you and I talk," he said. "And you tell me what you're hiding." Ava's stomach tightened. She forced her voice steady. "I already told you," she said. "Conflict zones, a team. Training that isn't on paper." Grayson's gaze stayed sharp. "That is the outline," he said. "I want the names." Ava's phone vibrated again once, then stopped like a tap on the shoulder. Ava turned away before her face could betray her. She went back into operating room 4, re-gloved, re-gowned, and stood beside Maddox as he closed. Maddox glanced at her, once eyes searching. "He cornered you," he said quietly. Ava kept her eyes on the field. Yes. Maddox's voice dropped. He cornered me earlier too, he admitted. He asked what I saw. Ava's chest tightened. What did you say? Maddox swallowed. I said you saved the patient. Ava didn't look at him. That's not all you saw. Maddox's mouth tightened. No, he said, it isn't. They finished. Marisol's pressure held. Desai's voice eased the tension in her shoulders, loosening. She's stable, Desai said. Ava looked down at Marisol's face, still calm under anesthesia dust washed away. Ava thought of Lena somewhere in this storm, and felt a small ache she refused to name. When Ava stepped out, the hallway was louder now. More stretchers, more blood, more voices. The mass casualty event did not end. It simply changed shape. Ava moved through it like someone trained to keep moving. She helped place lines. She held pressure on a scalp wound until a nurse could suture. She carried a blood cooler with Monica when the tech's hands were full. She didn't stop to breathe until she found herself at a sink again, water running, hands under, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Do not answer him. Ava's jaw tightened. She typed back with one thumb, careful and fast. He knows Park's work. The reply came immediately. Then be smaller. Ava's throat tightened. She read the words twice as if reading them differently might change them. Her fingers hovered. She wanted to ask questions that would drag the hidden world into the light. Where are you? Are you safe? Why did you choose me? Instead, she deleted the thread again and forced her breathing to slow. A door opened behind her. Ava didn't turn. She heard the pause, the presence. Grayson's voice came controlled. Dr. Carter. Ava shut off the tap and turned. Grayson held a folder now. Her folder. She recognized the cheap manila, the hospital label, her name printed in black. He set it on the counter between them. This is what I have, he said. Ava didn't reach for it. Grayson opened it and flipped through pages, tapping with one finger. Medical school, he said. Clean. Rotations, he said. Clean. Letters, he said. Glowing. He stopped on a page and held it up slightly. Then he said nothing. Ava's mouth went dry. I told you. Grayson's eyes didn't leave hers. You told me a story, he said. I need the truth. Ava felt the ground shift under her feet, subtle but real. The hospital had rules. The hospital had boards. The hospital had ways to destroy you without raising a voice. Grayson leaned in slightly. I'm going to ask you again, he said. Did you know Elias Park? Ava stared at the folder at her own name, printed like it belonged to someone simple, someone safe. She felt the weight of Marisol's hand on her sleeve. She heard Drew's monitor in her mind. She smelled blood that didn't belong in a place this clean. Ava lifted her gaze to Grayson. I knew him, she said. The words sat between them in the scrub room like a dropped instrument, too loud for how quietly they were spoken. Water still dripped from the sink. Somewhere down the hall, a stretcher rolled by, wheels rattling over tile. The hospital kept moving, as if it did not care what confessions cost. Grayson did not blink for a long moment. His eyes flicked to the folder on the counter, then back to her face, as if he were trying to match the woman in front of him to the neat lines on paper. Elias Park is dead, he said. Ava felt her throat tighten. She kept her gaze steady. That's what the world was told. Grayson's head tilted a fraction. His expression did not change much, but Ava saw the shift anyway, the smallest recalculation. You chose your words carefully, he said. Ava's fingers curled against her palm. I'm trying not to ruin anyone's life. Grayson stared at her hands. He trained you, he said. Ava did not answer immediately. She could still see Marisol's face on the table, dust washed away, skin pale under light. She could hear Drew's monitor turning from panic to steady. Those sounds were the only argument she trusted. Yes, she said. He trained me. Grayson exhaled through his nose slow, like he was forcing himself not to explode. How, he asked. How does a newly graduated physician end up under Park's hands? Ava's voice stayed quiet. I went where the paperwork didn't reach. Grayson's eyes sharpened, conflict zones. Ava nodded once. Grayson's jaw worked. 2 years? Yes. And you expect me to believe you just stumbled into one of the most guarded skill sets in trauma surgery, he said. You expect me to believe Park chose you at random. Ava swallowed. I didn't ask him to choose me. Grayson leaned in slightly. Then why you? He asked. Ava felt the answer press against her ribs. She did not want to say it out loud. Saying it out loud made it real in this bright building with cameras and committees. I was there, she said. I didn't flinch. I learned fast, and I didn't leave. Grayson's gaze held hers. You were 25. Ava nodded. People were dying. Age didn't matter. Grayson looked away for the first time, staring past her shoulder at the door. The noise from the hall rose and fell like surf. This is a hospital, he said, voice lower now. Not a tent, not a battlefield. We answer to boards, to lawsuits, to standards that keep patients safe. Ava's mouth tightened, and patients stayed unsafe until someone did something. Grayson's eyes snapped back to hers. Do not turn this into a sermon. It's not a sermon, Ava said. It's what it felt like. Grayson stepped closer, close enough that Ava could smell the faint sting of surgical soap on him. You are telling me you learned Park's work in conditions that would get you disbarred from medicine if the wrong people heard it, he said. And you brought that into my operating room without disclosure. Ava held his gaze. I brought it into your operating room because a man was dying. Grayson's nostrils flared. You brought it into my operating room and you made me look unprepared. Ava's chest tightened. She could have apologized. She could have softened. She could have let him keep his pride. Instead, she said the truth. You were improvising, she said. So was I. Grayson's stare was hard enough to bruise. Then, something in his expression shifted the anger cut with grudging recognition. Park had a reason for everything he did, Grayson said quieter. Even the things people hated him for. Ava did not speak. Her phone sat heavy in her pocket, silent for now, like a breath held. Grayson tapped the folder. If the board asks, what do you say? Ava's throat went dry. I say nothing. That is not an option, Grayson said. Silence looks like fraud. Ava stared at the folder. He made me promise, she said. Grayson's eyes narrowed. He made you promise what? Ava forced the words out. Not to name names, she said. Not to drag anyone into it. Not to give the world a map to the places he worked. Grayson studied her. Because he was hiding. Ava's jaw tightened. Because people needed him, she said. And the kind of help he gave did not fit under anyone's stamp. Grayson's mouth tightened. That is a romantic way to describe illegal practice. Ava's voice stayed even. It's an honest way. Grayson stared at her for a beat longer, then looked past her again as the intercom announced another inbound. He stepped back. Get back in there, he said. Finish the shift. We will talk when the building stops bleeding. Ava nodded and moved because there was no other choice. Hours later, when the last stretcher had been claimed by an operating room or a scan or a curtain in the emergency department, the halls quieted into that strange late-night hush, the one that still carried echoes of panic. Ava found herself outside Grayson's office, badge in hand, palms damp. Inside, Grayson was standing by the window, Denver lights scattered below like sparks. His coat was draped over a chair. His tie loosened. He looked tired in a way that power could not hide. He turned when Ava entered. Close the door, he said. Ava did. Grayson gestured to the chair, then sat across from her instead of behind the desk. It was a subtle shift, but Ava noticed it. Less courtroom. More negotiation. Tell me what you actually did for those 2 years, he said. Ava kept her eyes on his face, not the diplomas on the wall. Field hospitals, she said. Mobile clinics. Places where you treat whoever shows up. Grayson's gaze was steady. And Park. Ava's throat tightened again. He was there, she said. Not always, but enough. Grayson leaned back, studying her. You trained one-on-one. Yes, and he taught you his sequence. Ava nodded. Grayson's voice dropped. If I report this honestly, your career ends. Not because you are not skilled, but because the system will not tolerate the way you became skilled. Ava felt the words land like a door closing somewhere. She kept her face still. Then report me, she said. Grayson's eyebrows lifted. You think I want to destroy a resident who just kept 2 people alive today? Ava held his gaze. Then what do you want? Grayson exhaled. I want control, he said. I want clarity. I want to know what you can do before you do it. And I want a story that can stand up in a room full of people who have never seen a man bleed out in the dirt. Ava's mouth tightened. A story. Grayson nodded. A cover story, he said. One that is true enough to defend you and vague enough to protect whoever you are protecting. Ava's pulse quickened. How? Grayson leaned forward, hands clasped. Park had fellows, he said. People who learned from him before he disappeared from the conference circuit. Some of them are still in practice. Some of them owe me favors. Some of them will sign a letter that says you trained under their supervision in advanced trauma techniques. Ava's stomach tightened. That would be a lie. Grayson's gaze stayed steady. No, he said. It would be a translation. Ava stared at him. Grayson continued. We say you spent time in a private advanced trauma mentorship program, he said. We say it was rigorous hands-on, not affiliated with a major organization, and that your clinical work was off-grid but supervised. You do not mention conflict zones. You do not mention Park directly. You do not mention anything that can be investigated by someone hungry. Ava's throat felt tight, and if they ask why it wasn't documented, Grayson's voice went flat. We say the program was small and informal, he said, which is true. We say the documentation is limited, he said, which is true, and we say your skills were assessed here under my watch, he said, which will become true. Ava looked at him. You're putting your name on me. Grayson held her gaze. Yes, he said, because I am responsible for what happens in my rooms, and because I would rather build a safe structure around you than pretend you do not exist. Ava's hands curled in her lap. What do you want from me? Grayson did not hesitate. You do not freelance again, he said. If you believe a technique outside your current privileges is needed, you say it and you let me decide. You do not surprise me. Ava's jaw tightened. People die while decisions happen. Grayson's eyes hardened. Then you learn to make the case fast, he said. And if you cannot tolerate that, you should not be here. Ava stared at him. She could feel the walls of the hospital, the weight of the rules, the reality that this building could crush her without ever raising a scalpel. Finally, she nodded once. Okay, she said. Grayson's gaze softened a fraction, not kindness, but something like alignment. And one more thing, he said. Ava waited. You stop trying to look average, Grayson said. Ava blinked. You just told me not to surprise you. I told you not to ambush my operating room, Grayson said. I did not tell you to dull yourself into uselessness. Ava swallowed. Grayson's eyes stayed on hers. The residents already know you are not like them, he said. They can smell it. If you keep pretending, they will decide it means you are lying. And if they decide you are lying, they will try to expose you. Ava felt a small cold knot in her stomach. Nina's eyes. Maddox's stare. Monica's warning. Grayson leaned back. You can be exceptional and disciplined, he said. Those are not opposites. Ava held his gaze. And if they resent me, they will, Grayson said. That is their job. Your job is to operate well and teach what you can safely teach. Ava's breath caught. Teach. Grayson nodded. Park's work stays alive through people, he said. Not through secrecy alone. Ava said nothing. The words hit a place in her chest that was sore from holding too much alone. When Ava left his office, the hallway was empty, except for a cleaning cart and the faint smell of lemon disinfectant. She walked down the stairs instead of taking the elevator, needing the weight of each step. Her phone buzzed on the second landing. Unknown number. You told him. Ava's stomach dropped. She typed back with a thumb that did not shake. I told him enough. The reply came. Keep it that way. Ava deleted the thread. Then she stood in the stairwell a long moment, hand on the rail, breathing through the tightness in her ribs until it eased. The next day, the hospital tried to return to normal. The emergency department was quieter. The halls were less crowded, but the mass casualty event left residue. Nurses moved slower. Residents spoke softer, and rumors spread like a virus in a closed room. Ava felt it when she walked into the lounge and conversations bent around her. She felt it when a junior resident watched her hands instead of her face. She felt it when Nina Brooks stood too close at a patient bedside, eyes sharp, waiting for a slip. It came to a head in the skills lab 3 nights later. Ava was alone at first, practicing simple sutures on foam, forcing herself to move at a pace that looked ordinary. The door opened, and Maddox walked in, coffee in hand. Posture, casual, eyes not casual at all. You're here late, he said. Ava did not look up. So are you. Maddox watched her hands. I can't stop thinking about what you did in OR 4, he said. Ava tied a knot and clipped the end. It's done. Maddox set his coffee down. No, he said, it's not. You did an exposure I have only seen in textbooks, and you did it like you were opening a kitchen drawer. Ava finally looked up. Do you want something? She asked. Maddox hesitated, then nodded. Teach me, he said. Ava stared at him. No. Maddox's jaw tightened. Why? Ava's voice stayed flat. Because you want the trick, not the training. Maddox's eyes flashed. I want to keep patients alive. So do I, Ava said. That is why I'm saying no. Maddox took a step closer. Grayson is talking about you, he said. In that way, he talks when he's deciding whether to keep someone. Ava's throat tightened. Then focus on your own cases. Maddox's voice dropped. Brooks is trying to dig, he said. She's calling people. She's sniffing around your gap. Ava felt the cold knot tighten again. Let her. Maddox shook his head once. You don't understand how badly people want you to either be a fraud or a miracle, he said. They can't handle anything in between. Ava looked at him for a long beat. Maddox was arrogant, but his fear was real. He had watched Ava pull a patient back from the edge. He had watched the rules bend. And it scared him because the rules were all he trusted. Ava set her needle driver down. You want to learn, she said. Then you start where everyone starts. On the simulator, slow. Repeated. Maddox's shoulders loosened. Okay, he said. Whatever you say. Ava stood and moved to the cabinet, pulling out a synthetic model and setting it on the table. You do not rush, she said. You do not improvise. You learn the anatomy until you can see it with your eyes closed. Maddox nodded, almost too eager. The door opened again. Nina Brooks walked, an arms-folded expression unreadable. Well, Nina said, look at this. Maddox stiffened. Brooks. Nina ignored him, eyes on Ava. So you do teach, she said. Ava met her gaze. I teach when it's safe, she said. Nina's smile was thin. Safe, she repeated. Funny word coming from you. Ava did not react. She pointed to the model. If you're here to be useful, pick up gloves, she said. If you're here to be loud, go home. Nina's eyes flashed, then she stepped closer anyway. Show me, she said. Ava held her gaze. You don't get the show, she said. You get the work. Nina stared at her for a long moment, then pulled on gloves with quick snaps. Fine, she said. Work. Ava began with basics, not because Nina and Maddox did not know basics, but because repetition was where arrogance got shaved down. She made them name structures. She made them talk through decisions. She made them redo a movement until it was clean. Maddox tried to go fast. Ava stopped him with a look. Again, she said. Maddox's jaw tightened, but he did it again. Nina tried to argue. Ava ignored the argument and made her do it again anyway. By the end of the session, Maddox's hands were damp with sweat. Nina's face was tight with frustration. Ava's shoulders ached, but the model looked cleaner. The movements looked less desperate. Nina peeled her gloves off. "Where did you learn to teach like that?" she asked, voice lower. Ava looked down at the table. "From someone who didn't let me quit," she said. Nina's eyes held on her a second longer, then she grabbed her badge and walked out without another word. After Maddox left, Ava stayed in the lab alone, cleaning up. Her phone buzzed once, a small vibration. Unknown number. Good. Ava stared at the single word. She did not reply. She deleted it. Then she stood in the empty lab until her breathing slowed. 2 weeks later, on a night when the hospital was quiet enough to hear the vents, Ava returned to her apartment to find a plain padded envelope shoved halfway under her door. No return address. No stamps that meant anything. Just her name printed neatly. Her skin went cold. She carried it inside like it might bite. She locked the door, then locked it again without meaning to. She set the envelope on the table and stared at it, listening for footsteps in the hallway that never came. She opened it with a kitchen knife. Inside was a small drive and a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was familiar in a way that tightened her throat. "You stayed steady. Now stay wise. Use what the world is ready for. Keep the rest quiet. E.P." Ava sat down hard on the chair. Her fingers hovered over the drive as if touching it might burn. She plugged it into her laptop. A folder opened. Then another. Video files, notes, diagrams, handwritten pages scanned into crisp black and white. It was not one technique. It was a life's worth of refinement recorded with the ruthless clarity of someone who knew time was limited. Ava clicked the first video. The screen filled with shaky footage and harsh light. A tent canvas walls flapping. A surgical field lit by a headlamp. A familiar voice calm instructing someone off camera. Ava's vision blurred. She blinked hard and kept watching. The surgeon's hands moved with absolute economy, each motion purposeful. The camera shifted, and for half a second the surgeon's face was visible older than the photo in Grayson's folder, eyes the same. Ava's chest tightened so hard she had to inhale in short, controlled breaths. She watched until the case ended, until the patient's bleeding stopped, until the surgeon looked up at the camera and said, almost casually, "You do not do this for applause." Ava closed the laptop and sat in silence, the room suddenly too small. She thought of Grayson's office, of his offer, of his warning, of the way a program could be built to keep people safe, and the way power could also ruin everything if it touched this in the wrong way. Ava picked up the drive and held it in her palm. It felt light. It felt like a weapon. She did not sleep. At 5 in the morning, she walked into Crescent Ridge Medical Center with the drive in her pocket, her steps steady, her face blank. She went straight to Grayson's office and knocked once. When he opened the door, he took one look at her expression and stepped aside without asking why. Ava walked in, closed the door behind her, and placed the drive on his desk like evidence. Grayson stared at it. "What is this?" he asked. Ava's voice was quiet. "It's more than I can carry alone," she said. Grayson did not touch the drive yet. His eyes stayed on her face. "Who gave it to you?" he asked. Ava held his gaze. "The person you think is gone," she said carefully, and watched understanding flicker behind his eyes. Grayson swallowed. "Show me." Ava plugged the drive into his computer, opened the first folder, and clicked a file. Grayson watched the screen, his posture slowly changing as the footage played the same way it did in the operating room when his mind recognized something rare. After a minute, he leaned closer. After 2 minutes, his hand covered his mouth. Ava stood beside him, arms at her sides, feeling the weight of what she had brought into this office with diplomas and donor plaques. Grayson's voice came out rough. "This is not just training," he said. Ava kept her eyes on the screen. "It's everything she said." Grayson looked at her, and for the first time since the OR, his expression held something like awe without anger. "This could change programs," he said quietly. "It could change the way people survive." Ava nodded once. "It could also kill people if they copy it wrong," she said. Grayson's gaze sharpened back to responsibility. "Who else has this?" he asked. Ava shook her head. "Not that I know," she said. Grayson stared at the drive, then at her. "Then we lock it down," he said. Ava's throat tightened. "Yes." Grayson's jaw set with decision. "We build structure around it," he said. "We decide what gets taught to whom and how. We keep it supervised. We keep it controlled." Ava felt a small aching relief that she did not let show. Grayson looked at her. "If I do this," he said, "you follow the rules we set. No shortcuts." Ava met his gaze. "I will," she said. Grayson nodded once, then picked up the drive like it was fragile. "This stays in my safe," he said. "And we start documenting your skills properly. Assessments, witnesses, privileges, the boring parts that keep you alive here." Ava exhaled slowly. "Okay." Grayson glanced at the window, then back at her. "You understand what you just did," he said. "You brought a living legacy into a building that loves to own things." Ava's voice stayed low. "That is why I brought it to you," she said. "You know how to keep people from grabbing." Grayson's mouth tightened into something like a smile. "I know how to fight," he said. Ava nodded. Grayson turned back to the screen, paused the footage, then looked at Ava again. "You are going to have enemies," he said. Ava's hands curled. "I already do." Grayson studied her a beat longer, then gestured toward the door. "Go to rounds," he said. "Act normal. Let me think." Ava hesitated, then nodded and moved to leave. At the door, she paused, hand on the knob. The sunlight was beginning to creep across the carpet, turning the office warmer than it felt. "Ava," Grayson said. She turned. Grayson's gaze held hers. "You did the right thing, bringing this here," he said. Ava did not trust herself to answer with anything but a nod. She left his office and walked into the hallway, the hospital waking around her. Voices rose. Shoes clicked on tile. A nurse laughed softly at a joke. The world tried to be ordinary. Ava kept her face composed, her shoulders squared, and headed toward the stairwell, feeling the hidden weight of that small drive even though it was no longer in her pocket. Ava kept her face composed as she walked, but the building felt different now, as if the walls had learned her name. The hallways were the same pale gray, the same fluorescent hum, the same quiet tyranny of pager tones. Yet every time she passed a glass window she caught her own reflection and saw something she had not seen on her first day. Someone the hospital could not categorize. Rounds that morning moved like they always did. Grayson, at the front, voice, crisp eyes, sharp. Nina Brooks, firing answers like she was defending a thesis. Maddox, half smiling like sleep was a myth. Interns scribbling until their wrists cramped. Nurses watching the parade with the calm of people who actually kept the place running. Ava stayed in her lane, but she stopped trying to shrink into invisibility. She spoke when she had something that mattered. She kept her tone steady. She did not perform. She simply showed up again and again with competence that did not apologize. The change did not make people kinder. It made them curious. In the lounge, conversations bent around her like river water around a rock. When she walked in, someone always fell silent, a beat too long. When she walked out, voices returned softer, faster. Nina watched her like an unanswered question. Maddox watched her like a tool he wanted to understand. Monica watched her like a storm she hoped would pass without taking the roof. Grayson did not watch her in public. He did something worse. He measured her. 2 days after the drive appeared on his desk, Grayson scheduled Ava for skills assessment in the sim lab with 2 attendings present. Not as punishment, not as celebration, as documentation. The lab lights were bright and flat, the kind that erased drama. Ava stood at a station with her sleeves rolled, hands washed, posture straight. The synthetic models were laid out like evidence. The attendings were surgeons with calm faces and eyes that had seen too much to be easily impressed. Grayson stood in the corner, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Begin 1," attending said. Ava moved through basics first deliberately, like a pianist warming up. Needle control, tissue handling, not security. Nothing flashy, nothing theatrical, just clean, consistent skill. Then the attending raised the difficulty with scenarios that required judgment. Bleeding that did not respond to simple pressure. Anatomy that forced a choice. Simulated vitals dipping when hesitation stole time. Ava did not race. She did not freeze. She spoke her reasoning out loud, concise and precise, and executed with steady hands. When it ended, one of the attendings removed his gloves and nodded once. "She's solid," he said. The other attending looked at Grayson. "Where did she train?" Grayson did not look at Ava. "Privately," he said, intensively. The answer was a door he held shut with his own body. Ava felt the lie settle over her like a coat she did not want but needed to wear. Afterward, Grayson pulled her aside in the hallway near the stairwell away from people who listened with their whole bodies. "You are going to get assessments every month," he said. "You are going to document everything. If you touch anything above your current privileges, you ask. You make your case fast. You let me decide." Ava nodded once, "Yes, sir." Grayson's gaze held hers. "And you keep teaching fundamentals," he said. "Not the most dangerous parts, not the things that look impressive, the parts that keep people alive when they are scared." Ava swallowed. "Okay." Grayson's voice lowered. "You do not speak Park's name in these halls." Ava's chest tightened. "I won't." Grayson studied her a beat longer, then turned and walked away, coat swinging pace brisk, like he could outrun the problem of her existence. The weeks that followed did not ease. They tightened. The day shift began to request Ava in the trauma bay when a case came in rough. Nurses asked for her by name quietly, as if saying it too loudly would summon bureaucracy. "Get Carter," someone would say. Not because she was a hero, because she was calm. That calm had a cost. Some nights when the hospital finally quieted, Ava sat in her apartment with the lights off and stared at the ceiling, listening to her own breathing. She kept her phone face down on the table as if it were radioactive. She did not ask questions she did not want answered. The drive stayed locked in Grayson's safe. He did not share it with anyone. He did not even mention it again, not directly. Instead, he began building something around it piece by piece in the language the hospital trusted. Protocols, competencies, selection criteria, oversight. He did it like a man constructing a bridge in a storm, knowing the water would rise no matter what, knowing the only chance was to anchor deep. Ava taught in the evenings in the skills lab small groups controlled settings. Maddox showed up early. Nina showed up late and pretended it was an accident. A few other residents drifted in curiosity masking itself as professionalism. Ava made them slow down. She made them name anatomy until they hated her for it. She made them repeat motions until their arrogance became fatigue and fatigue became humility. One night, Nina slammed her gloved hands on the table in frustration. "This is ridiculous," Nina snapped. "We already know this." Ava looked at her expression steady. "If you already know it, you can do it perfectly 10 times in a row," she said. Nina's eyes flashed. "You like this," she said, "being the one who knows." Ava did not flinch. "I like patience living," she said. "Do it again." The room went quiet, thick with tension. Maddox looked down at his model and started over without a word. Nina stared at Ava for a long beat, then started over too, jaw-tight hands shaking slightly. When the session ended, Nina lingered by the sink as Ava cleaned instruments. "You're not a fraud?" Nina said, voice low as if admitting it hurt. Ava kept her eyes on the water running. "I never was." Nina swallowed. "You're still hiding something." Ava looked up then just once. "Yes," she said, "and you should hope I keep hiding it." Nina's face tightened, then softened, not with understanding, but with something like reluctant respect. She left without another word. That was the closest thing Ava got to peace. 3 months after the collapse, Grayson called Ava into his office at the end of a long day. The sky outside had turned the color of bruised steel. Denver's lights blinked on one by one like the city was waking up for its night shift. Ava walked in and saw a folder on his desk that was not hers. Grayson looked up. His expression was strange, a mixture of irritation and concern with a thin line of something else threaded through it. "Sit," he said. Ava sat. Grayson slid the folder across to her. The logo at the top was not the hospital's. It belonged to an international health coalition, the sort that appeared in news segments and grant proposals. The letters were clean. The wording was formal. The paper smelled like toner and distance. Ava opened it and scanned the first page. She felt her pulse jump. Requested clinician Dr. Ava Carter. Ava's throat went dry. "This is a mistake," she said. Grayson's eyes stayed on her. "No," he said. "It's not." Ava flipped to the next page. The mission was described in careful language. High-risk environment. Civilian casualties. Trauma capability needed. Medical support requested under a temporary credentialing agreement. Location listed as a region that made Ava's stomach clench, a place she had seen in dust and heat, not in printed letters. Ava lifted her gaze. "Who put my name on this?" Grayson leaned back in his chair. "They claim they heard about your background," he said. "Field work, advanced trauma exposure." Ava's fingers tightened on the paper. "From who?" Grayson's expression tightened. "I have a guess," he said. Ava held his gaze. "You think it's him?" Grayson did not deny it. "I think someone is reaching for you," he said, "and I think it is not an accident." Ava stared down at the folder again. The language was clean. The request was official. The world was offering her a legitimate reason to go back into the places she had once existed without a name. Ava's mouth tightened. "If I go," she said, "I risk everything here." Grayson's gaze remained steady. "If you go," he said, "you risk dying." Ava swallowed. "I know." Grayson tapped a finger on the desk. "And if you stay," he said, "you risk becoming restless. You risk making mistakes because you are trying to pretend you are only one thing." Ava's chest tightened. He was too close to the truth. Grayson exhaled. "I built a structure around you here," he said. "I can build a structure that allows you to leave sometimes legally and return without questions." Ava stared at him. "Why would you do that?" Grayson's mouth tightened into something that was not quite a smile. "Because I am not blind," he said. "And because I have seen what happens when people like you are forced to choose a single life." Ava's fingers rested on the folder's edge. "The board will ask." "They will," Grayson said. "So we do it through approved partnerships. We document training. We document competencies. We make it boring enough to survive scrutiny." Ava looked at him. "And if the mission asks how I learned what I know?" Grayson's eyes hardened. "They will ask," he said, "and you will answer with the same translation we already agreed on. Private mentorship, advanced trauma education, limited documentation." Ava's throat tightened. "This is still a lie." Grayson's voice dropped. "This is a shield," he said. "Use it." Ava sat in silence, listening to the faint hum of the office, the distant sounds of night shift beginning the building, turning its gears. Grayson leaned forward. "Do you want to go?" he asked. Ava felt the question settle in her chest. She thought of Marisol's hand on her sleeve, Drew's pale face, the drive in the safe, the residents in the lab learning slower, safer, the idea of a fellowship that might someday make this knowledge available without killing people through imitation. Then she thought of the other world, the one that did not wait for committees. "Yes," she said quietly. "I want to go." Grayson nodded once. "Then we do it right," he said. 2 days later, Ava stood in her apartment suitcase open on the floor, folding clothes with mechanical precision. Hospital scrubs, a few simple shirts, a small toiletries bag. Nothing sentimental. Nothing that would matter if it disappeared. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You received the request." Ava's fingers tightened. She typed back slowly. "Yes." A reply came. "Come." Ava stared at the single word, then deleted the thread and placed the phone in her pocket, as if nothing had happened. At the airport, the world was normal in a way that felt obscene. Families dragging carry-ons. Business travelers with headphones. A couple arguing softly near a coffee stand. Ava moved through it with her boarding pass in hand, feeling like she had stepped into the wrong movie. On the plane, she sat by the window and watched Denver shrink into grids and lights. The mountains sat beyond it, dark and indifferent, like they were always watching. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Sleep did not come. When the plane landed, heat hit her as soon as the doors opened, thick and dusty, carrying the smell of fuel and sun-baked ground. She followed the mission team to a transport vehicle. Her badge clipped to her shirt, the official logo bright against fabric. The convoy moved through streets that looked both familiar and strange, buildings scarred, people walking with the purposeful pace of those who had learned how to survive uncertainty. Children stared. Adults looked away. The field hospital was a cluster of tents and converted rooms behind concrete barriers. The air inside smelled of iodine and sweat. Generators hummed. Fans pushed hot air around without cooling it. Ava stepped into the triage area and felt her body shift into a different gear. Her posture changed. Her breathing steadied, her attention narrowed. A nurse in a faded vest walked toward her. "Dr. Carter," the nurse said, accent thick, eyes tired. "We were told you would come." Ava nodded. "Where do you need me?" The nurse gestured toward a tent where voices rose in urgent bursts. Inside, the lights were harsh and uneven. A patient lay on a cot, chest rising fast, blood on gauze. A medic pressed down with both hands, face tight with effort. Ava moved automatically, gloving up, leaning in, asking short questions. She worked with the team, her voice calm, her hands steady. She did not need to perform. She did not need to prove anything. She just needed the patient to live. After the case stabilized enough to transfer, Ava stepped back and exhaled. A voice behind her said her name softly. "Ava." She froze. Not because she did not recognize the voice. Because she did. She turned slowly. In the doorway of the tent stood a man older than the photo Grayson had shown, hair streaked with gray face, lined by sun and years and choices. His eyes were the same. Calm. Sharp. Unmistakable. Elias Park. Alive. Ava felt her throat close. She stared at him as if her eyes could force him to become a ghost again. Park's mouth lifted slightly, not a smile, more like acknowledgement. "You made it," he said. Ava swallowed hard. Her voice came out low. "They think you're dead." Park's eyes flicked toward the tent wall, toward the outside world that would swallow him if it knew. "It's useful," he said. "Dead people do not get summoned to hearings." Ava's chest tightened. Anger flared hot and sudden, mixing with relief so sharply it almost hurt. "You let me carry it," she said, voice tight. "You let me stand in that hospital and take the heat for what you taught me." Park stepped closer, his gaze steady. "I did not let you," he said. "You chose it." Ava's hands curled. "I chose to save people." Park nodded once. "Yes," he said. "And you chose to learn." Ava's eyes stung. She refused to blink too long. "Why now?" she asked. Park's gaze moved past her shoulder to the next cot, being wheeled in the next urgent problem. "Because the need didn't stop," he said. "And because you built something in that hospital." Ava's throat tightened. "You know." Park's expression barely shifted. "I hear things," he said. A medic called for help. Park glanced toward the sound, then back at Ava. "You want to talk," he said. "Or you want to work?" Ava stared at him a beat longer. Then she pulled on fresh gloves. "Work," she said. For weeks, Ava operated in the field hospital until her days blurred into a rhythm of urgency and exhaustion. She slept in short bursts. She ate when she remembered. She washed her hands until the skin cracked, then washed again. Park worked beside her, not constantly, but enough. When he stepped in, the tent seemed to tighten around him as if everyone instinctively made room, not out of fame, out of gravity. He did not compliment. He corrected. He did not lecture. He showed. He pointed with a gloved finger and asked, "What do you see?" until Ava saw it. Sometimes, late at night, when the generator hum softened and the air cooled just enough to breathe, Park sat outside the tent with a cup of bitter tea and spoke quietly, not about heroism, but about restraint. Skill without discipline is just ego, he said once, eyes on the dark horizon. You learned that in Denver. Ava stared at her hands. Grayson, she said. Park nodded. He is building you a place to stand, he said. Do not waste it. Ava swallowed. He thinks you're gone. Park's gaze stayed on the horizon. Let him think what he needs, he said. It keeps the structure intact. Ava's chest tightened. And what do you need? She asked. Park looked at her, then eyes calm, unblinking. I need you alive, he said. And I need you careful, because now you carry more than technique. Ava felt the words land heavy and familiar. She looked away before her face could show too much. When the mission ended, Ava left quietly. No press, no photos, no speeches. Just a signature on a form, a handshake with exhausted nurses, a last look at the tents that felt more honest than any conference hall. At the vehicle, Park stood in the shade, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Ava stepped toward him. Her voice was low. I can't keep pretending, she said. Park's gaze held hers. You can, he said. You already did. Ava's jaw tightened. It's exhausting. Park nodded once. Yes, he said. That is the cost. Ava stared at him, anger and affection tangled into something that hurt. Will I see you again? She asked. Park's mouth lifted slightly. If you keep your hand steady, he said. Ava exhaled a small bitter laugh. That's not an answer. It is, Park said, and then his gaze shifted to the vehicle. Go, he said. Build what you promised yourself you would build. Ava climbed in and did not look back until the tents were swallowed by distance. Back in Denver, winter had tightened its grip. The air was thin and sharp. The hospital smelled clean again, almost aggressively, so as if it could scrub away everything that happened beyond its glass. Grayson met Ava in his office the evening she returned. He did not ask where she had been. He did not ask who she had seen. He did not ask the question that lived like a spark in his mind. He asked only one thing. Did you learn anything? He said. Ava's mouth tightened into something close to a smile. Always, she said. Grayson nodded once as if that was the only answer he needed. The months that followed were busy in a way that felt purposeful. Grayson filed proposals. He spoke to committees. He found donors who cared about survival rates more than headlines. He created a program with enough structure to satisfy the hospital and enough intensity to actually mean something. Ava became the face of it inside the building, not in newspapers, not on banners, but in hallways and labs and operating rooms, teaching residents how to move with discipline. Nina stopped trying to expose her and started trying to match her. Maddox became her most persistent student, less arrogant now, more precise, the kind of surgeon who could hear correction without flinching. Monica watched it all with quiet approval, like she had been waiting for something to stabilize. On the day the fellowship was approved, Grayson called Ava into a conference room where the hospital executives sat with polite smiles. They spoke about innovation and safety and prestige. They spoke about standardized training and oversight. They spoke about bringing advanced techniques to the next generation. Ava listened face composed and said what she needed to say in the language they understood. When the meeting ended, Grayson walked beside her down the corridor, hands in his pockets. They're going to want more, he said quietly. Ava nodded. I know. Grayson glanced at her. We give them what they're ready for, he said. And we hold back what could get people hurt. Ava swallowed. Yes. Grayson's gaze stayed on the hallway ahead. You understand what you are now, he said. Ava's throat tightened. A resident, she said. Grayson's mouth tightened. No, he said. A gatekeeper. The word landed heavy. That night, Ava stood at the OR sink, scrubbing in for a routine case. A new intern stood beside her, hands trembling slightly as soap ran down their wrists. The intern glanced at Ava, eyes wide. Dr. Carter, the intern said, voice low. Is it true you did something in trauma that even Grayson couldn't do? Ava kept scrubbing water, hot rhythm steady. Wash your hands, she said. The intern flushed. Yes, they said quickly and scrubbed harder. Ava rinsed, then looked at the intern's hands. Slower, she said. You're rushing. The intern swallowed and slowed down. Ava watched them for a moment, then spoke, not loudly, not like a lecture, just like truth handed over carefully. Nothing looks impossible when you're watching the last step, Ava said. The intern glanced at her. Then what is it they asked? Ava dried her hands and held the towel like it mattered. It's expensive, she said. The intern frowned. Expensive how? Ava's eyes met their steady calm. In time, she said. In discipline. In responsibility. A page sounded overhead. Another case. Another life. Ava turned toward the operating room doors, the intern following, nervous and eager. As they walked, Ava's phone buzzed once in her pocket. A single vibration like a tap on the shoulder from a world that never fully let go. Ava did not check it. She pushed open the OR doors and stepped into the light hand, steady face calm, carrying secrets that mattered less than the person on the table. Outside the hospital, Denver's snow fell quietly, covering the city in clean white. Inside, the work continued ordinary and brutal and sacred in the way it always was, with no applause and no pause, just the steady insistence of people who needed help.